Alright, let's begin. So for this week's assignment, we had to do the multi-alarm, input manager, moving the camera to the scene level, time singleton had to be made, registering, deregistering game objects to the scene, and also starting the tank demo. So if I start this really quickly, and then hold down the J key, see that the frigate stops, starts, stops, and then it will start again. Excuse me, this is because I made it so that the key frigate has alarms that will register and deregister the J key, just to show that we can register and deregister. If I press the spacebar and hold it down, we can see the little debug message and we get the B sphere. If I let go of it, we get the debug message again. So we have the key press functioning as well. Alright, so whenever we want to enter the scene, we have to submit entry with the game object. That's how we connect all the registries. I'll explain that a bit more in the tank demo. Other than that, for all of our key down and key up, etc., we have the switch statement to determine what to do. And then in our alarms, we have the multi-alarm. I also had alarm 0 deregister one of the other alarms, just to show that you can register and deregister alarms through other alarms. Onto the actual code for this week. So for the alarmables, now we have an alarm storage to get all the necessary data for a given alarm. And we store all that in an array whose size is determined by the manager. Whenever we want to trigger an alarm or do any registry or deregistry, we take the expected ID and then we find the proper index in our array. So that's how we trigger, and then all the requesting and registry, deregistry, all that shenanigans does the same thing. For the alarm manager, now instead of having the map have a float paired to an alarmable, float now is a pair of the alarmable and the ID for the given alarm. So now whenever we process and we meet our criteria, we gather both the alarmable and the alarm that we want to trigger for the trigger alarm function. We also now have a time singleton for the alarmable, so rather than asking our game engine directly, it asks the singleton to get the time, and this also is where we process the frame time as well. For the inputables, we have two maps, one for active storage and one for inactive storage. These maps store the data here similar to how we had the arrays, though it's a map instead of array. And also the key for the map is the key on the keyboard and the state we care about. So for the inputables, we check to see if it exists in our inactive state. If it is in an inactive state, we then move it to the active map and then remove it from the inactive. If it does not exist, then we make it and push it into the active map. And then when we deregister, we push it into the inactive map before removing it from the active one. For the manager, rather than managing the inputables, the input manager manages a bunch of single key managers. So whenever we register an inputable, we check to see if the key it wants exists. If it does not exist, we make a new key manager for it. Otherwise, we just register directly to that key manager. And then deregistering similar, and we have the processing of the keys here. So for the key managers, whenever we register, we take the given state and insert the object into that associated list, whether it's press, down, release, or up. Deregistry is the same thing. Take the state and then erase it from the appropriate list. When we check the key, we check the state. If it's down, we check if it's the first frame it's down. If it's the first frame, then it's a press state. Otherwise, it's the down state. And then if it's up, we check to see if it's the first frame it's up. That determines if it's the release state or the up state. And then processing, we just loop through everything, or loop through the associated state. For the update, inputs are processed before alarms and after the broker. We also have our cameras set up here, so now cameras in the scene level. See scene level stuff. And that is it. So for the tank demo, this is where we have the bullet showing the dynamic creation. So if I press spacebar, we have a bullet created. It's entered into the scene for exiting and recycling. If I press again, we can see that a bullet was reused. If I press it a few times, we create a bunch of them before we recycling and exit them. So now if I press a few times again, we can see that all the entries were reused rather than created. All reused. The leaks. So the way that we handle this is when we initialize the bullet, we submit the entry. Entry, submission, and exits pass it to the broker. When the broker says it's time for the game object to enter or exit the scene, it uses the user-defined connect or disconnect function. So for the bullet, we have the connection registering everything, and then the disconnect deregistering everything. And managing it, I just used the simple factory similar to what we had in 372. Simple factory management. But instead of a singleton, I have it created in the tank. And that's it.